When Glynis contacted me and asked me if I could prepare something for this, I sent her 2 presentations to choose which she liked. One was the best 100 slides, or best 100 photographs of UFOs of the 1990s, and the other one was something that I have never published anywhere before and hadn't released before, and really wasn't particularly interested in releasing it now, but that's the one that she chose. It's the story of an alleged sentry at level 4, or level 2 of area S4 in area 51. Now, I haven't had any trouble with interference in what I'm doing since the reticulum case that I was studying in Charleston, South Carolina, and also had it in the research in Switzerland on the case of the Palladian contact with Edward Meyer. We were followed, our telephones were monitored, things were interrupted, mail was interrupted, a lot of things during those times. And I really didn't know why at the time, because it was like all the other cases I was dealing with, except when Bob Lazar came out of Area 51 and told his story. It appears that the craft that he was doing the Beck engineering on was similar to the style of one of the ships in the Palladian case. And the only conclusion I can draw at this time is that our government had put the 2 things together much earlier than we did. They had the information, we did not until Lazar came out, and they thought we were in contact with the owners or manufacturers of that sport version that Bob Lazar said he was working on. In the reticulum case, on the first abduction aboard the craft, Bill Herman asked why him, and they said that because they had examined several other people for some time, for years, 2 or 3 years, and tabulated the data on their lifestyles, their education, their knowledge, their relationships with their family history, where they lived, their beliefs, all of those things, and they put these into what they call the lexicon. It's the lexicon's own word for a computer. And the lexicon selected Bill Herman of the half a dozen or more that they studied for years, and he became the contactee. So now he says, what can I do for you? And they said, we would ask your help in in assisting us in recovering the remains of one of our vehicles in the western part of your land, they said. And he asked them what happened, and they said that the ship had encountered a strong beam of energy that locked onto the craft and cooked out the computer control system, and it went out of control and crash landed. And they said that they concluded from this that it was a hostile action on our part, especially when they lost the second craft to the same beam. They thought we were shooting them down. And they said that they had convened a meeting with other space-traveling entities, intelligences visiting this planet, to consult on the form retaliation should take. Can you imagine what kind of retaliation we could have suffered? And while they were doing this, while they were consulting, they noticed that the weapon kept firing and kept going on. Then it would stop for days, then it would fire again for a period, then it would stop again, and they concluded that it was something else other than a weapon, and that their encounter with it was accidental. And it turned out in time we discovered that the Navy was experimenting with the development of our area search radar with a 200-mile radius that was many times powerful than the previously existing radars that had a vertical sweep beam and could lock on. It's the only one that we had at the time that could do it. And we believe that that was the cause of the several crashes in the western part of the United States. As a matter of fact, they all came down within that 200-mile radius. And while I was investigating the reticulum case, my mail was interrupted, my car was followed, my telephones were interrupted, I received death threats, Bill Herman received death threats, everybody involved did. And the only conclusion I can make now is, since that time, I have discovered that we have alien bodies that are probably reticulan alien bodies in the custody of our government that have been autopsied, and some are stored in frozen in cryogenic storage. So those 2 cases hit a delicate spot somehow, somewhere in the government interest in this thing, and I received death threats incident to both of them. After Glennis selected the event to be presented here today, I began to receive the death threats again. They're the form of anonymous telephone calls that say you've gone too far, you're not coming back alive. And they didn't carry out anything before, so they probably won't again. But let me go ahead and lay out the events as they developed. On the 22nd of October, 1991, one of the strangest and most exciting stories of my career in UFO research began to unfold. A young man calling himself Connor O'Ryan called my home in Tucson, Arizona, from Los Angeles, and said he wanted to come see some of my collection of UFO pictures and information. He said he'd be here the next day, and that was about noon of that particular Tuesday. About 1400, 2 hours later, I received another call from the same voice saying that he feared he may be in danger because when he went to the bank to draw out money for his trip, he was informed that his account was frozen. He tried his bank card in the automatic teller machine and it was returned unhonored by the machine. He went to another bank and tried to withdraw money on his Visa card and it was also dishonored. He tried his MasterCard, it was not honored. He had a Bank America card, he had a Diners Club card, he had an American Express card, tried them all and they were all dishonored. So his credit accounts had now been successfully blocked and he couldn't use anything to get any money. He said he suspected the worst, and he's got good reason to do so because we learned later that he was a member of Delta 6, which I will explain as we get to it. He went back and packed his bags and left his apartment because he's afraid now that something is going to happen to him. He doesn't want to be where they can find him and began moving around the city of Los Angeles. He called me again about 14:15, that's 2:15, to say that he had something for me and if I would get him a bus ticket so he could deliver it, he would bring it over. He said the next bus left his position at 1600, that's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I raced to my nearest mailboxes outlet and wired him $100, which would cover the ticket to Tucson. And after that, I was tied up on my own telephone for a few minutes, and that line was interrupted by another call coming in, and it was the same voice again saying that the money was not at the Western Union and that time was running out. I assured him that I'd check on it immediately and for him to go back to Western Union in 15 minutes and try to pick it up again. And I called, and by the time I got through to Western Union, they told me that he had just picked it up, and they gave me a confirmation of his receipt of the money. The mail in Western Union Station was in the mall across the street from the bus station, and he made it back in time to get on the bus. But now he began to worry about what he was carrying. And on impulse, he decided not to carry it with him because he's being watched too close, apparently, but to ship it to me to hold for him instead when he got to Tucson. He made up a package in an automobile starter carton, a cardboard box he got out of the trash in the bus station, weighted it with rocks to disguise the contents, and packaged it and prepared it to express mail it registered and insured by bus service to me. This was taken to the mail section in the bus station and was shipped to me by a priority rate. The man arrived in Tucson at about 2:30 in the morning and called me, and I went down and picked him up at the bus station. He did not want to eat, but I was up and I wanted a cup of coffee, so we stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts and had a cup. And then we went back to my house and went to sleep. I put him down on the couch in my living room. My grandson was sleeping in a porch bed on the other side of that, and my bedroom was on the opposite side from him. He's right between us, sleeping there. The next morning, Wednesday morning, all seemed normal, and we went out for breakfast. The young visitor asked a lot of questions about UFOs and my research. He said he'd found out about me and my interest in a book on UFOs, among the very few on the subject, in the Las Vegas Downtown Public Library, and copied my name and address from it. I called to the Tucson telephone directory, gave him my telephone number. He said he was a U.S. Marine SEAL. SEAL is a special elite force trained in everything. They're trained in parachuting and in scuba diving and demolitions work, everything. a special degree that they trained to, and that he had been such since his enlistment some 9 years ago at San Diego. He was 29 years old, and for the last 9 months he had been assigned to Delta Force Team 6, a super elite cross-service activity that answered to neither of the service commands, but to a command line of its own that answered directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is all new to me. I'd never heard of anything like this before. He said he was, until 1 week ago, assigned to duty at S4 in Area 51, the Area 51 facility of the Atomic Energy Commission in a reservation in Nevada. He said he was a sentry who lived in quarters at the facility and whose duty post was on level 2 of a 4-level complex. At least that's all he knew of, were 4 levels. He said there were no sentries below level 2, as all below that were electronically controlled, and he did not know what was down there. He said he had heard strange sounds when the elevator was open and people were coming out or going in. He didn't know what that meant. At level 2, they controlled access to the separate elevators that went down below, one elevator to level 3 and another to level 4. To use one of these elevators, it took a card, a thumbprint, and a matching retina scan of the right eye. Anyone who was not cleared by this process was immediately arrested. A bell would ring, and they would immediately arrest them and hold them for somebody to come down from level 1 and get them. The sentries worked continuous shifts of 4 hours on and 8 hours off, all day long, every day. They patrolled their area at attention and were prohibited from looking around or directly at anybody. They were not allowed to talk to each other or to anybody else. Socialization off duty was discouraged, and little conversation or discussion took place in the facility because there were monitors everywhere, making everyone pretty much of a loner there. Those men were given physical examinations. This was an annual type physical examination every 90 days, during which they were always hypnotized for 1 hour as a part of the physical. He didn't know what they did during that hour. Even their most secret thoughts were probed. These men were allowed 3 days of rest and recuperation leave in groups taken in Las Vegas once a month, and they had to go out in groups. Like nobody could go out alone. They were dropped at the Imperial Palace Hotel on Las Vegas Boulevard in the afternoon of the first day and were picked up at the same place about 4 o'clock in the afternoon of the third day to go back to their work facility. Rooms were provided in a special reserve section of the Imperial Palace Hotel maintained by the security service that they worked for. The men were searched on the way out of the secured S4 facility and were searched again and given a polygraph test on the way back in. Now, this polygraph test was probably a PSR test more than anything else because they didn't wire them up. They asked them questions that were carefully recorded with good microphones, and they probably looked for stress through the psychological stress evaluation technique. On the last quarterly physical for our guest, he was told that he had Hodgkin's disease and would be given a medical discharge. He was also told that it was quite advanced and he had a short time to live. He was distraught at being kicked out of his choice service, a career that he liked, and which he loved and counted on as a career. He wanted to go all the way to his retirement in this service. He was frightened at the prospect of being ill and debilitated by a killing disease when he felt perfectly well and healthy. He'd always been very active. Connor had begun to take an interest in what was going on in his facility and began to look around at things. He saw 7 disc-shaped crafts stored there in level 2, where there were 9 bays, 2 of them unoccupied. 3 of those bays had craft that were all alike, exactly alike, and the remaining 4 craft in the other bays were different, all different from each other. He saw some of the craft occasionally taken up to level 1, and sometimes one or another would be taken outside when all satellite activity was known to be clear. The craft were kept on rolling platforms, and they were always moved on these same platforms from his level to level 1. There were other sentries on level 1 whom he did not know. He really didn't know the ones on level 2 either. He saw at least two alien bodies pickled naked in a liquid and preserved standing erect in large transparent tube-like cases. A metal band around the waist held the bodies erect. The reason he knew there were more of these body containers, but they were in a line that ran away from his point when he patrolled, and he could only see the first two, and there were at least two more that he couldn't see what was inside, but he suspected the same. The eyes in one of the cadavers that he could look at seemed to be sunken back some, indicating long-term death for a long time. Over time, a small camera was successfully taken into that facility and pictures were taken, and the film was brought out. Despite the prohibition against speaking, when they were on leave in downtown Las Vegas, he discovered that one other sentry there was equally disenchanted. And that sentry knew another one that was disenchanted. It was brought into the group. Now they have three together. The third one knew that the biologist, a civilian technician that had care of the bodies, was disenchanted. And between the four of them, they conspired to bring the camera in, successfully keep it hidden, and take pictures inside. This became a dangerous game, and its possible discovery during one of the hypnotic sessions may have been the real reason for his sudden separation. If this is the case, and he really had Hodgkin's disease, the implications are fearful. He may have been given this disease by his own superiors to terminate him for what he had seen or what he was thinking. This had already occurred to him, and he was very worried because he still felt in perfect health and had no history of such a disease in his family. His retaliation, if this turned out to be true, was to release some of the 52 photographs they had already taken inside of level 2 of S4 and had successfully smuggled out. To blow the lid off such a nefarious operation, this was truly the work of mad scientists, if this is true. Connor felt his hand was being forced by the freezing of his own money supply, and he now sought to get out of the whole thing. Can anybody put the batteries back in that for me? He sought to get out of the whole thing. He shipped his weapon, the set of 52 photographs, in a starter box only 20 minutes before he got on the bus to come to Tucson. Other sets were strategically stashed in case of an intercept of one or more of the packages. Actually, they had prepared 6 different sets and stashed them in 6 different locations. He had one of those he was bringing to my house. The people that held those other sets had a capability of making more copies and stashing them further. So this was a hedge against killing somebody to stop the process. If they killed him, they would only tend to confirm what could be released. We think that was the only reason he wasn't killed in our hands. Now he was waiting anxiously for the box to arrive. The shipping clerk in Los Angeles having advised him that it would take 3 days to get to Tucson, and this would mean that it would arrive on Friday the 25th. Is the little device okay? Yeah, it's okay, is it? Can be used? Okay. But we'll put it on the table to keep it a little safer next. But on Thursday the 24th, I found a pale blue envelope resting in the brackets of a porch mailbox next to my front door, right next to the front door. It bore no address and no stamps, indicating a hand delivery to my house. The return address printed in the upper left-hand corner of the envelope was Imperial Palace, 3535 Las Vegas Boulevard, South Las Vegas, Nevada, 89109. Inside the blue parchment-like envelope was a sheet of similar blue stationery with the Imperial Palace name and crest on the top of the page and a gold crest on the bottom in the right-hand corner. On that sheet of paper was a message in very simple, childlike grade school penmanship letters, the kind you've seen on the penmanship training tablets. In these letters of a style used in penmanship practice in elementary school, which is very difficult to judge handwriting characteristics from. The message said, "It's to come home," and a Delta Force symbol with the point of the triangle up indicating it's cool, as we found out later. Does it work now? Yes. Okay. I'll keep it on the table here. Do we point this at the machine? Okay, yep. This looks like it. And I turned it off? Oh, great. Now it should be on, huh? Stand by, we'll have it here in a minute. I turned it up again. Now forward, okay. This is a copy of my Western Union transmittal of the $100, not important here. And here is where I found the envelope in the brackets of the mailbox. You can just see it around the corner there of the pillar in front of my house. Let's see now, I've got a light here. Here we go. Right there is the letter. Boy, that comes through on the speakers too, doesn't it? And in that letter, we'll get this straightened out yet. There's another picture of it. I took that with my camera before I removed it because this was really strange. This never happened to me before. And in that letter was this note. Where am I here? The message said, "It's to come home," and a Delta Force symbol with the point of the triangle up, indicating it's cool, which we later found out to be the meaning of it. I showed the letter to my grandson, Jim Cox, who was still sleeping on the porch. I was up early that morning. Connor was sleeping on a sofa between the porch and my bedroom, and he was still asleep. I woke Jim up and asked him what he thought of it. He suggested we wait. He said he didn't know what it was, and suggested we wake Connor up and ask him. And when we did, Connor went visibly pale, was immediately alert. Beads of sweat popped out on his forehead, and he says, "Oh God, they're here already." And he shook his head. Our visitor is now concerned that he also has a tracking device implanted in his body, because though we have watched carefully, no evidence of being followed had been detected. And we have done everything we could do to see if he was being followed. We took different routes home. We stopped and waited for cars to pass, a lot of things. Nothing happened. So we were pretty sure that we were clean. Now this is at my door. This angered Connor even more than the possibility of the disease being introduced, because he now has evidence of this. He said he wanted to give us a statement to be held in confidence unless and until something is done to him. If he is harmed in any way, or his friends or family or their families, because of him being harmed, this statement could be released. The statement that he was going to give us. So Jim and I took a high-8 video camera, and we went out into the desert to a high spot where all approaches could be watched simultaneously from all directions, and video recorded a 2-hour statement for this purpose. 5 copies were made, and all were dispersed to separate locations away from my home in trusted hands, who would release the information if anything happened to any of us. And we talked about this on the phone to let whoever's monitoring know that we've scattered the evidence and it's not going to be picked up quickly. At that time, Connor told us that there were 5 people from inside S4, including himself that is, all working on level 2, who had become disenchanted over the secrecy of the operation and the way it was being managed. They thought the secrecy was misplaced and that the American public ought to know what was there, especially since this place had become commonly known inside as the museum, since the primary research activity had already been moved elsewhere. And they thought that the scientists that were coming and going to levels 3 and 4 didn't look enough like real scientists to them to be productive. They thought that scientific institutions should have access to the information that they thought they were guarding. The security people working in the facility there were not allowed to use names, but were all identified by a number. Connor said his number was 122. The other 3 sentries had 123, 124, and 125, indicating that they had all been assigned about the same time to that facility. A biologist working with the bodies had number 118, showing that he had arrived just shortly before them. These numbers applied only to their activity at this facility, and the numbers were changed as other people came and went. The new numbers were assigned. This group had been considering this action and contact for some time and had discussed whom of the UFO researchers they would contact. They went to the public library in Las Vegas and studied the available material on UFOs, looking for names. They rejected MUFON and CUFOS because they feared these organizations might have been infiltrated by agents of the American government. They rejected John Lear as a primary contact because he was too close and was being watched constantly, and they knew this. They rejected George Knapp of TV Channel 8 because he was also too close and may want to release the story prematurely. They chose us because they thought we could be persuaded to wait and go at a pace they had decided upon, and we didn't have anybody else in our organization, just Jim and I. And now I'm alone. Connor was leaving, and they had already taken a number of photographs and had stashed them successfully, and Connor would deliver one set to us to be held in confidence for a future date, and would arrange for a follow-on plan. Those still inside would take more pictures, try to get more documents out, trying to get documents with official headings on them discussing the craft and the bodies. The biologists would provide dissection reports, autopsies, and analyses of other alien bodies, together with photos of the bodies under dissection, of various bodies under dissection. This material was to be brought out periodically and made available to us through a special drop arrangement or arrangements, and we were given instructions for follow-up and were told how and where it would be done. This could all be published on a signal to raise the profile of the group in case any of them was harmed. They hoped that a public outcry would result and that this would save some of them from internal executions. Such an outcry could lead to lawsuits against the government, subpoenas of evidence, and finally bringing down the house of cards of security over these important matters affecting us all, our society and our world. Friday morning, we were anxiously waiting the delivery of the shipment to get the package, when at about 11:30 that morning, I went out to see if any mailbox flags were still up on my street to see if the mailman had come. And coming back to the door, I noticed another of those pale blue Imperial Palace envelopes stuck behind my house numbers. And this time, the message was on a 3x5 white card. Did it change? No? Same one. Well, let's see. Is that still the same? We're going forward. Now we got a new one, right? Okay. Oh, somebody else help me? Oh, thank you. That's another one, is it? This time the message was on a... It is? We got a slide stuck there.
1 second.
This time the message was on a 3x5 white card with the Delta Force triangle, with the position now turned to about 2 o'clock position, indicating time was beginning to run out. Then there was a circle with an envelope in it and a line drawn diagonally across the whole pictogram, indicating no shipment and possibly an intercept of the registered package in bus mail. That's way ahead. Okay, now go forward with the buttons over there. Past the first message. They're not coming up?
No, you put 2 slides in the one slot.
Oh, Lord. Can you take it out and back the rest of them up 1 slot to that then? So there was then a circle with an envelope in it and a line drawn diagonally across the whole pictogram, indicating no shipment and possibly an intercept of the registered package as well. The next pictogram in that second message was a circle with LV bus in it and a diagonal line drawn across that, indicating possibly an intercept at the Las Vegas bus terminal, which we later found was another stash. That was followed by a big question mark indicating, what are you going to do now? But the most threatening part of this message was the last 2 symbols. One was the word home in block letters, and the other was 2 paper matches. Jammed again? The last symbol in that message was 2 paper matches, indicating possible arson of the home. That arson threat was turned over to the county sheriff and the local fire department for file in case this threat was ever carried out. Now try to go forward 1 frame at a time.
Really doesn't like cardboard
Okay. If this threat was carried out, it clearly leads back to Delta Force and Area 51, and we'd been given documentary evidence to prove this, allowing us to proceed legally against potential arsonists. We have the names of the chain of command leading all the way back to the Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney, and we have attorneys who are most anxious to initiate such a lucrative action against the United States government and the intelligence service and Dick Cheney. One of the 52 photos in this package was said to clearly show Mr. Dick Cheney inspecting the level 2 of the S-4 facility where the alien ships and sample bodies are kept. Okay. There's the message we're talking about. There's the arson threat. Leave it there. This photo was surreptitious, the picture that is of Dick Cheney was surreptitiously taken by our own Delta Force visitor, that's Connor O'Ryan, at that time of the visit, which was made since the end of the Gulf War. Interception of this package of photographs does not mean that they're all gone. Other sets were made and stashed in trusted hands for safekeeping in case of loss of some of them. They can be produced to save a life or to pursue an arson threat carried out by Delta Force or its agents. The evidence is clearly established in the documents we have. After the third letter from Delta Force on Saturday the 26th, our man decided they may come in by force and take him, so he went out into my backyard to a dark corner of the backyard under some big oleander trees, pulled back some leaves and buried his identification cards under the leaves and then covered them, making the whole thing look undisturbed so that nothing would be evident. Then, sometime shortly after that, we went to the McDonald's shop, just a short distance from my house, for a sandwich and coffee for lunch. We were absent from home for less than 45 minutes. And there at the McDonald's, we discussed copying his cards and dispersing the copies also to save them in case somebody was trying to get them. When we returned home from McDonald's, he went out to get the cards that he had buried to make the copies, and they were already gone. They were gone. The leaves still looked undisturbed and the cards were gone, leading to speculations that even the ID cards may have tracking devices in them. We began to suspect that he has a tracking device in his body by this time. Now we think that it's either in the ID cards or both. The third message had been found about noon in another envelope, white this time, with a white sheet of paper inside. It had been stuck in the corner of the house numbers by my door again. That should be it. This time the message seemed to be an offer. This is truly Orwellian in scope and a very frightening situation for our society. That day, Jem Cox had to go to Phoenix on business and took Connor along. Here's the message. This one was redrawn from the original because when Connor read it, he crumpled it up, tore it in pieces, crumpled it up, and threw it in the wastebasket. So I had to redraw this one. Here it shows the package intercept from the bus line that he rode on, also the intercept at the Las Vegas station, a question mark, what are we going to do now? Dollar signs indicating we can negotiate. They want all the stashes, no foul play, or Delta triangle turned down, which means termination. And then it shows how. There's 3 stick figures walking together with crosshairs drawn through them. So Jem had to go to Phoenix, and on business he took Connor along with him to see what would happen with a change of location. As expected, the next message from the unseen forces was delivered there in Phoenix, found the next morning. The two had detected no evidence of pursuit, though they sanitized their trail to their best of their ability. They drove very fast, over 100 miles an hour, very fast until no other car lights could be seen behind them, then pulled off the road behind some bushes and waited to see if any other cars came by. They did this several times and detected no evidence of pursuit. They had left Tucson late in the evening and got to Phoenix just before midnight. They talked with Jim Delatosa for about an hour and then went to bed in a room in an outbuilding provided by Jim in his facility there. About 2:30 early the next morning, Jim Cox was awakened by someone else in the room. He tried to open his eyes and tried to move, but he was completely paralyzed. Couldn't move anything. But he could open his eyes just a crack and look down his torso through a small slit, and he could see, looking down his prone body, he could see 4 ninjas. That's men with close-fitting black bodysuits with padded feet and black knit ski masks pulled over their heads. One was standing over him on his bed, straddling his ankles, with an automatic weapon pointed at his head. Another similar figure was standing over Connor on another bed, with a automatic weapon pointed at his head. And 2 more of the black-dressed ninjas were going through the things, Jim's and Connor's things, on the floor. One came up with a piece of paper from Connor's bag, looked at it, cursed quietly, crumpled it, threw it against the door. There was a 5th man in a suit in the room with the 4 ninjas. Nothing was said between any of them. Jim lost consciousness again, and they both slept until 2:30 the next afternoon. When they got up and went out to the car, there was another pictographic note in the Delta Force shorthand language showing the Delta Force triangle pointed back to the 12 o'clock position. See if we can get it this time. That got a Delta symbol pointed up? Yes. Indicating no rush. Then there was a carefully disguised penmanship letter saying, "Situ extreme, please be Pat." That was followed by pictograms showing 3 men in step, $signs, says no TV, working on deal. You have 7 days, now they're giving us more time, 7 days to produce the pack or the Delta Force turned down, meaning termination. We want GW1 to come home. We will call in 48 hours. Well, we didn't know who GW1 was, so we asked Connor, and he says, "That's me." The next day, on Sunday the 27th of October, a 5th note in a white envelope was stuck in the car door outside of the room there. It had a sheet of white paper inside, and it instructed them to check into the Motel 6 in Scottsdale and wait. They did this. Let's see if we probably got that note here too. That say, go to Scottsdale and wait. Well, let's see. So it should say is, will meet Situ Extreme Motel 6, Scotts, within 72 hours. That's the same one? We're not getting traversing down there. Okay, there it is. They did this. They went to Scottsdale, which is just a short distance from where Jim Delatosa lived, on that same afternoon, which was Sunday. And on the way, they stopped and purchased an infrared sensor light from a hardware store, open on Sundays in Phoenix, and cans of peanuts to get the aluminum pull-off tops off from the cans. They rigged the sensor light inside of the door to come on when somebody was just beyond the door on the outside, and slipped the peanut can lids. They were inserted in the crack around the top of the door to fall out in case the door was opened, or in case the crack was probed with anything to see if there was booby traps. That night, both the light came on and the can lids were knocked to the floor by someone checking the door. And they waited to see what was going to happen. There was total silence. They didn't hear anything. And they waited for some time, and the light went out by itself and didn't come back on again. They assumed that the intruder had gone away. They went back to sleep. The 2 men checked out the next day and went out to the parking lot to return to Tucson. As they approached Jim's little red Porsche car out there, there was a 6th envelope pinched into the door crack. Then they thought of their arrival when they came to the hotel to check in the Motel 6 in Scottsdale. When they got there, the clerk in the hotel he handed Jim a key that was laying on his pad in front of him on the desk. Didn't take it off the rack. So Jim picked it up, looked at the number, and it says, thinking that might be this was rather suspicious, he looked at the number on the key, affected dislike, and said, "Give me another room." I don't like this number. I'm very sensitive about numbers. The clerk objected, but he did change the key and gave him another room. And the key they ended up was a different room entirely. Now they wondered what would have happened if they had used the first key. This time the note seemed a little more conciliatory. It had the Delta Triangle pointing up at 12 o'clock again. This one said, this note said, 100,000 within 48 hours for location. Is that it? Okay. No foul play, and the Delta symbol turned down in case there was foul play, and again, the three-stick figures with a circle with crosshairs drawn through it. On Tuesday, the 29th of October, a seventh note was received again mentioning 100,000. Oh, I just said that. Okay. The 48 hours ran out at 1800 at 6 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday evening, and at 6:15, an eighth note was found stuck behind the house numbers, again in Tucson, and this one said, "Please be Pat. Having problems with deal. Okay, we will be here tomorrow between 1300 and 1600. That's 1 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Be here," and the Delta Triangle turned up again. We waited all day Thursday from noon until after 6 o'clock with no further contact. Finally, Connor asked for my car to go make a phone call. He came back somewhat disturbed and said that he had been told that orders had been issued to terminate him. At that point, we decided to raise his profile so that such a termination might draw the interest of hundreds of UFO buffs anxious to check Area 51 and S4 and anxious to expose some of what was going on. I called the local ham radio net and asked them to stand by in case something dangerous happened. They would get some word and understand what they would be dealing with, and giving them a few clues of what was happening and other contacts to put the whole story together. I also called the computer mailbox and had them stand by for a spectacular release which had already been prepared and was being held, or for a story about our being taken in on an intended setup to discredit us. Either way, the story would get mileage. There was no contact at all day Friday. Very unusual in view of the deadlines we'd been receiving before and the continuous activity. In the morning of Saturday, the 2nd of November, we found a plain brown envelope behind my house numbers again. This was apparently the end of the negotiations and a final kiss-off. Is that a change there? Yep. It is? The threat was plain and simple. It said, no more negotiations. They would not hesitate to take out my whole neighborhood if necessary, and a reference to Malakia. The reference to Malakia at the bottom meant just that. That doesn't have it. Okay, what have we got there? That's the plain brown envelope. And the next slide. Okay, here's the note, and see the reference to a strange name, M-A-L-A-K-E there, K-I-A. So we asked Connor, what does Malakia mean? They said, referring to Malakia. He said that was a hit, a government hit, that killed many innocent women and children to get one man. And they're indicating that they wouldn't hesitate to take out my whole neighborhood if necessary if we didn't do the right thing. Sunday passed and still no contact was made. Connor was beginning to lose patience in view of the execution order issued against him. He borrowed my car again and went to call a friend from a payphone. And his tutor and mentor from an earlier contact was the one he wanted to get in touch with and consult with him on what to do. He's trying to stay alive now. The friend offered to come and get him and take him to a safe place. On Monday, the 4th of November, Connor decided to go get us another stash of evidence to be used in publishing the whole story, if that became necessary, to prevent the deaths of his several Confederates. He's afraid he can be taken out any time now, and it might happen. And he was now fairly certain that his Confederates had been discovered by whatever process they used to discover him, most likely the hour of hypnotic induction after the physical. He timed this call to coincide with the arrival of his rescuer in a private plane to take him to safety, or so he thought. And he asked to be dropped at the bus station, where he could mix with people and take a taxi to meet his mentor. His last words to us were that he would retrieve one of the stashed packages and put it in our hands before he left town. He would contact us with more instructions in a few hours. That was the last thing we saw of our mysterious visitor. Connor had given me a locker key that he said was for a locker in the Greyhound bus station, in the Greyhound bus terminal in downtown Las Vegas. He said that there was an envelope taped behind the door locking mechanism in the front of a locker there, fastened in place with duct tape, which I should remove as soon as possible, because when that was removed, another package would be put in its place. And if we didn't take it out, there would be no follow-on delivery by his friends inside S4 if they were still able to do it. I went to flew to Las Vegas, called John Lear to go with me, and we went to the Las Vegas bus station with John Lear carrying a video camera to videotape me as I opened locker number 424, the key that I had and had been given by Connor. I also had a map of the location of that locker bank in the bus station, and the number of the locker in the bus station corresponding to the key that I was carrying. I found the correct bank of lockers, and the position of the locker number I was looking for should be there because the numbers in the bank on either side were correct, but that bank in the middle had been changed. The bank is about 4 lockers side by side and 4 or 5 or 6 tall, I don't remember how many, but there was about 5 of these banks of lockers, and the bank that I'm looking for has been replaced. The whole group of lockers had different numbers, and my number was not there. The locker numbers were in correct order otherwise on either side of this position, but one whole blank bank of lockers was now absent. The locker key I had looked exactly like all the other keys in the other lockers in that number series right there in the same terminal, but the locker I wanted by number was gone. I went to the locker manager in the terminal and explained my dilemma, telling him I'd left clothes in there a week ago and what happened to them, and he said that the lockers were a concession and that the concessionaire did occasionally change lockers for his own reasons, and that yes, some lockers had been changed last week. That ended my contact with this story, except that I had the 2-hour videotape interview with the mysterious Connor O'Ryan. My house was again searched several times, but that tape was never found because it was in fact in the hands of the Pima County Sheriff's Office, in the possession of Bob Dean, who was a deputy sheriff, locked in the sheriff's safe in a plain brown envelope as evidence, and nobody but Bob and I knew what it was. Bob's the only one who knew where it was. These are sketches of the craft he observed at level 2. And let me back up here a little bit to the first one. This one was a goldish silver color, and it stood on 3 legs. The next one was a bright silver color and finish, like brushed silver, brushed aluminum, and had a projecting base that looked to Connor like it could be retracted, but it was sitting on the base on the platform. This next one was hovering a few inches above the platform that they were stored on, and it had a base that was extended that he thought also might be adjustable or retractable from looking at it. This one was a bright silver mirror-like finish, like chrome. This one had a dull gray finish, and I believe that there were 3 identical ones in the 3 bays. 2, 3, and 4 bays had these craft in them, a dull silver color, and they sat on the platform. This one sat on the platform also, and it was kind of a bronze color with a different colored metallic dome that he thought might even be able to be somewhat transparent or made transparent. Here's a sketch of the floor plan. Now I'm going to shut these off and go to a clip of the interview. For the rest of the time we have available, you'll see the interview live with this Connor O'Ryan, and the noise that you hear is the wind blowing over our cheap little microphone on the high camera we're using, but you can hear my interview with him taking place quite clearly. Can you proceed with the videotape, please?
Connor. Why do I keep saying Shane? I don't know.
Connor, I want to thank you for making contact with me. It was a surprise to suddenly hear from you a day ago, and to hear what you could tell us with respect to some things that we've been doing for a long, long time. And I want to welcome you to our family of researchers. As far as we're concerned, you're now one of us. You're an investigator and researcher, a brother investigator and researcher. And I'd like to ask you, Connor, if you can describe to me how you became, first of all, what's your background? Can you tell me something about your background?
Okay, well, I joined the Navy in the early 80s. I went into the Naval SEAL program and became a SEAL.
The original tape was in high 8 in color.
I've been
It's not
attached to the
transferring
Special
to
Forces
your standard here with the
Special
color, but you can still hear it and
Operations
see it.
Department of Naval Intelligence for approximately 8-9 years now. I've been on a number of covert operations, and just recently, well, about a year ago, I was assigned to a place in Nevada, which most people know as S4, as a sentry, which all sentries there are Special Forces personnel from all 4 military branches. I've been there for 9 months. I was there for 9 months. I've recently been discharged for medically, which I'm still checking that out. While my tour of duty there, I was a sentry in the complex, which is an extremely sensitive complex, which they have discs there. I have positively identified 7 of them, and I've also identified 7 humanoid creatures with like grayish skin. I don't know if that's because of the being in the tubes and the solution that they're placed in right now. Right now I'm basically on the run there. I don't want to mention any names or colleagues. I don't know what basically my destiny holds for me at this moment. I know that this has to be said and brought out. And I've made contact here with Mr. Stevens because I feel has adequate connections to someday bring all this out in the open.
You said that they had 7 discs there. You're talking about disc-shaped flying vehicles or something.
Flying vehicles. All the vehicles are of extraterrestrial origin. They are not. When I first got there, it took me a good couple weeks before I could fully comprehend and realize this. I've always been an avid believer in life in the universe, that we're not the only ones, but this confirmed it for me in my own mind, and there are other people there that believe and feel that this should all be brought out too, but it has to be done slowly. There's 4 levels in Site 4. Excluding the top level, the surface, which is basically a hangars with the satellite. There's really not too much to it, but the levels are all operated. There's the first and second levels are all elevator, where they keep the flying disc, ships, whatever you call it. They the surface. Right when I was there, they were trying to operate the disc, but to my viewing, unsuccessfully. There's scientists there, I've personally witnessed high White House officials being there. Right now, I'm basically kind of scared. I mean, I'm on the run. I don't know what everything holds for me. I just want to get this out in the open.
Let's start with the extraterrestrial vehicles, the discs. Take them one at a time and describe each one as best you can remember it, using the pencil here or whatever to make whatever sketch you want to as you go.
Okay. 3 of them are exactly identical.
How many?
3 of them.
3 of them are identical. Maybe the top tip one here.
Okay.
Easier. What's the rectangle you just sketched on the bottom? Is that what they sit on, or?
This is like what they sit on now. I have personally witnessed when they somehow activate this vehicle and a bottom pops out, and then it kind of pops out a little bit and comes to about right, I'd say maybe a foot below the vehicle, and it sits on a cushion of air about 2 inches. There's nothing below it. This is a brushed type, brushed here, aluminum, and up here it's a high polished. When you're near the vehicle, the static electricity is extremely intense. When you put your face up to it, breathe up against it or anything, there's no fogging of any sort at all. And I also found kind of peculiar is there's no dust ever on these, and I don't never seem to see anybody wiping them off. There's no residue of any kind on any of these vehicles, on these 3.
What's this? Is this retractable?
This part right here comes down as retractable.
The bottom.
It sits on the ground, and when they activate it, it seems this part pushes it like a hydraulic mechanism, brings it up off the ground to about a foot. And then you don't hear nothing, absolutely no sound, and then it just picks up, and it sits on about 2 inches of air.
You ever see this rectangular part here retracted so that the disc is flush on the bottom?
No. There's always about 3, a meter and a half maybe of
protrusion on the bottom.
Protrusion on this, which is also a brushed aluminum like the bottom part right here.
What about the part that's extended below that? Is it brushed aluminum also?
That's a blackish, a flat blackish. Let me look for the words here. I mean, it's kind of a blackish thing, but while it's sitting here, the electricity is, the static electricity is so intense, it expands. This is blurry kind of down here.
I see.
It's kind of blurry and like it's, say you're looking at a car hood in the heat, the heat dissipating from a car hood right there.
Okay, 3 of them are like that.
These vehicles are...
What size?
Oh, I'd say 11 to 12 meters.
Well, that was to give you an idea of what the interview, how it proceeded, and how we got the information. He told us that there was an aircraft carrier type elevator from level 2 to level 1, that the discs were stored on platforms, rolling platforms with rubber tires, that were about 35 feet in diameter, if I remember correctly, that were wheeled into position on the elevator and taken up to level 1 occasionally, and then brought back down again. We never did find out whether he really had the disease or not, because he wasn't there long enough, and we couldn't get an appointment for him overnight. And then he became concerned about his own safety and left. Whether he's still alive or not, I don't know. We never did get any of the stashes of pictures that they had taken. I have a feeling that the other men inside were detected probably the same way they discovered him. And we believe that the entire shift in level 4 was changed to the man to prevent any further contamination of the operation there. This apparently had happened before, because several of the members of his team had numbers close together, like they were assigned from. None of them ever knew each other. They all came from different places, and they were completely unknown. They weren't allowed to use names inside. There were no name tags on their suits. They didn't wear their numbers. They were known to each other by number, and they weren't allowed to discuss anything. There were audio and video monitors all over the place. They were allowed to talk in front of the television watching sports games. They were allowed to talk to each other while they were eating their meal, but those were the only times. And they were discouraged from talking to each other at any other time, and little sociability took place there in the facility. And I believe we're just about out of time here, so with that, does Glennis or anybody have anything else they want to announce here? We can bring up the lights. And if there's any questions, if I have time, I'll take questions on this. Do we have any time left?
I think at this point, we might take the questions and go right on, and we'll just see how we got at the end of the afternoon.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.